you want a glass of water?
Great, thank you.
Well, it's the only thing I could think of that it would love a hot dog joke. Well, good evening, everybody. Do you know, it's almost, you need to come more often, or I need to get more sisters, because believe me, if this was a service, they'd all be sitting at the back. So they've all come to the front, which is really good. It's my great pleasure to have Sister Sarah Margaret, full Sunday name, Sister Sarah with us, who comes to us from the American House of the Society of St. Margaret, and she's going to tell you a little about her journey, the work of the sisters, and then, you know, you can ask as many questions as you like, as long as they're polite. Yes, they're a well-behaved crowd usually. So,
but you're making no promises.
But I'm not. That's what I'm telling you. I'm making no promises. Yeah. So, over to you. I think you sit down if you want to, or if you want to stand, whichever you rather.
Since I'm on my feet, I will just stay on my feet for the time being. In any case, as he said, my name's Sister Sarah Margaret, and I have been a sister for just shy of 25 years. I realized last month that that was the month that I arrived at the convent for good. 25 years ago, and maybe 2 or 3 weeks. So that sort of blew my mind, because it does not seem at all like that long. But here I am. And people usually start by saying, so did you know when you were a child that you wanted to be a sister? And I said, I gave it deep consideration at the age of 7 and decided not to. I went to a marvelous camp run by the Sisters of St. Mary, Western Province, and I started at the age of 7 for 2 weeks, told my parents that they were mean to send me away for so long, and how could they do such a thing to me? And then about February, I started asking to go back, wore them down, and then started planning my life around St. Mary's camp, because I loved what they did. I loved the classes. I didn't know the sisters too well. There weren't lots of them. But they too blew my mind, because my mother had shown me her yearbooks with the sisters in, you know, the full 1950s garb, and explained to me what a sister was, because there are no sisters in Indiana, in the middle of the country. And so this was new, and I ran in and I was like, hey Mom, where's the nuns, when I got there to camp? And a woman with long shorts and a ponytail and a print shirt came up and said, hi, I'm Sister Mary Martha. This is 1973, mind you. And my mother and I were just, that is the reaction I usually get now when people hear that I'm a sister, even if I'm in my habit or not in my habit, because we are, at this point, kind of almost unicorns. In the Episcopal Church in the United States, I'm beginning to believe that seriously most Episcopalians do not in fact know that we exist. And I did not know that that was the case until I said I was coming to the community, and they said, so you're becoming Catholic? And I said, well, no. I mean, nothing wrong with that, and also, why would you think that? Nobody knows, because there are so few of us, and we don't have the history in the States the way you all do here. People here seem to be used to the idea that there are, in fact, Anglican religious. And as I said, there, people don't know. What I did consider when I was a child was the whole concept of priesthood, because I am a PK. I'm a preacher's kid. My dad is an Episcopal priest. So I grew up around church, wanting to be as near the altar as I could, and I used to play priest and set my stuffed animals up in rows so they could go to church while I was going to church. But I kept putting it off because, as Alex knows, this is hardly the easiest job. And I had seen this. And so I was doing this, but it wouldn't go away. And then I thought, when one of my friends said, well, let me back up a little bit. I was teaching at an Episcopal girls' boarding school in the middle of nowhere in Virginia, in a little one-stoplight town, not near any other one-stoplight towns. And so we were thrown together, and there were two people that were praying with me a lot. And God was just up to things. And I walked into her apartment one day on the dorm, and she said, he says that you need to join a religious community. And my first reaction, even though it had crossed my mind a number of times over the years, was, but there would be no men, and there would be lots of rules, and I could never leave. And my friend looked around and said, and your point is? Because it wasn't all that dissimilar in some ways. But they were right, and God was up to things. And even though I was refusing to discuss this because they were I explained to them how unsuitable this would be for me. They're still smug. It's been 30 years now. They're still smug. One of them is now a canon in one of the cathedrals in England, and one of them is back in church music. So it's been a journey, and as you may have found in your life, our journeys, we help each other along, and God works through each of us to speak to each of us. And so they were the ones who said things out loud that I was not thinking about. And what a joy it ended up being once they had mentioned it, and it wouldn't go away. And one of them found the website for me. This is definitely the short version. Because it was complicated and God was doing things and there was prayer and I needed more God, but I didn't know how. Sent me the website and there were these questions. Have you ever had somebody ask you a question that just hit you right here? And it was, do you want life with prayer at the center, in community, in service to others? Do you want your whole self to belong to God? And a yes jumped out of my gut, dragged me off by the collar. 15 minutes later, I was typing an email to Sister Carolyn, who was the vocations director at the time, saying, I wouldn't go quite so far as to say that I'm interested because that would be too scary, but tell me a little bit more. Could you send me some materials? And that first visit, a little trickle of joy started. And half of me is screaming bloody murder because I loved teaching French. I loved my kids. The girls were great. So it wasn't that I was getting away from anything, but I needed more. I needed more God. And the thought of devoting, as our service said, every faculty of body and soul to God forever, that's a yes. That's a yes. And so I set foot, and half of me is like, yes, yes, yes. Half of me screaming bloody murder. Came home, told my parents that I was considering looking into the possibility of the idea of perhaps considering investigating, looking into considering trying my vocation. And my mother started talking about the weather. Literally. I'm telling her this, and she's like, it's been beautiful weather in San Diego. Like, Mom, blue skies. Well, Mom, 70s. She was not having that. They did their very best to be supportive, but it wasn't until they came to the community when I was clothed as a novice eventually and saw that it was not what their imaginations had made up. They did a complete about face. My mother was an associate, and it became part of their life, and it was something that fit my family somehow, and we hadn't thought about that either. So this was a surprise. God is full of surprises. It's not where I thought I would go. I am so grateful that I did not have the life I had designed for myself. I mean, God really does know sometimes what the thing's going to be. And so the opportunity to give my whole self with a yes is the greatest gift I could possibly have been given. Even though it's not one I was going after, it's not one I thought I would ever want. Surprises, though. You'll have had your share of surprises with God. I'm sure you can think of things in your own life. So it's interesting. And also my sisters. Well, I have sisters in my family, but my sisters at St. Margaret's, you know, they have their own stories, they have their own surprises. But it's together that we find God most fully, when we are community. And I think that's part of the way we live as Christians. We aren't individuals, we're part of the body of Christ. And this is just one particular way of living it out a bit intensely. And I'm grateful for that vocation. Now, you all know about the sisters here. Let me give you just a little bit on how we ended up in the States. We ended up going over there in 1873 officially, although the investigations started a few years earlier, to help run Boston Children's Hospital. Because we had some nursing skill and they needed someone. So we went over and were involved with running Boston Children's, which I've read in their history as a novice. One of our sisters was superintendent, and that involved, helping with the nursing, training nurses, doing all the supply ordering, doing some fundraising, I think, touring visitors, hiring fire, like all the things unpaid because of generosity of people there who knew that we could offer ourselves for a need. But we grew into, as we did here, other things. So they discovered, for example, to their dismay, that in Boston at that point, there was no nursing care open to people of color and like hospitals, because it was all segregated. And of course the story is that only happened down south, and it was another thing down south, but Boston too. So the sister said, we can do something about that. And so they opened a nursing facility for people of color, especially women and children, which eventually it went through a number of phases, I should say. So I've seen pictures of tents for TB because they were having people live in tents at the time for a treatment. But by the time the late 20th century rolled around, it was a nursing home in more of a standard way. And meanwhile, they had done altar bread, they did embroidery, they did some teaching, they were parish sisters. Basically, look out the window and see what the need is and see what we can do. So, in a way, that's what we've always done. We started out doing some nursing, but it wasn't so much about the nursing, it was about where are the needs? What can we do? What can we give? How can we address this? So whether it's cancer patients or people who are exhausted from the daily stress of life and need someplace silent where they can turn off their phones, I usually tell our retreatants, I'm like, just tell them the nuns won't let you. Just don't answer your phone. Turn it off and go take a nap. And then, here we have our community, our chapel. You're welcome to our worship. And then we have a convent in Haiti, for example. 1927, we went down there to help run a school, founded some other things like Sister Joan was a physical therapist, and so she founded the first school in Haiti that was for children who were disabled. And one of our sisters, Sister Claire Marie, who's my boss in the kitchen, was one of the early students there because she has a little bit of sight, but not much. And so she grew up with the sisters, and then God blessed us with her vocation. And we have some other sisters who are Haitian too, but the ministries varied, they still do. And they were in Montreal for a while, and we'd start things and then hand them over to the diocese, go someplace else. Right now, we have the Mother House in Duxbury, which is just south of Boston. And we were in the city, but 40,000 square feet of ancient HVAC got very expensive. And when you have this much money, you really don't want to be throwing it all at the oil companies. So especially after the 2010 earthquake, we could see that it really wasn't viable to keep the place in Duxbury and also this massive retreat center. So we sold that to a college, took that and built a solar and geothermal smaller house on the land that we already had, and that's where we are now. But we also have Sister Promisa is holding down the fort in New York City, and I think Sister Katia may end up there soon. And then in Haiti. Now, right now it's a little bit different in Haiti because it has gotten extremely dangerous. It has not been that bad there in anyone's lifetime memory. People in their 80s are saying it has never been this bad. And from the Zooms I've done with listening to the State Department, they would certainly agree. So we're getting creative because we're not leaving. We did, however, evacuate her just before the president had the deadline about no more Haitians. We have situations there. Anyway, I'll leave that aside. So she is with us, but it took a helicopter evacuation from the capital to a city in the north where there is a Haitian airline that does still fly to the U.S. because U.S. airlines are no longer allowed to land in Haiti. It's too dangerous. The gangs were shooting at the planes and hitting them, not just. So then she took, from there, she took another flight on a different airline and got up to us. And so she'll be with us, but she's going to have to start commuting, and we're figuring out how do we pay our scholarship schools, because one of the things that we do in Haiti is we have a scholarship program, and Sister Katie is in charge of getting the school fees to the different schools, and that's great. You can wire money if they have a bank account, but there are schools that don't have bank accounts. So that's something we're working on. We've also done care of elderly women. We have employees that we're supporting down there, and it's a little complicated right now, but our work in Haiti And our Haitian sisters, you know, that's part of who we are in the American house now. So that's not going anywhere. What else was it that you said? That would be.
I don't know. Maybe we'll throw out some questions and
Please.
then some things. Anybody got anything that they're burning to ask? As I said, anything goes, more or less.
How many of you are there in the house near Boston?
8. So yeah, we've had 5 deaths in the last year. So it's been a year. So, and then.
So do you have younger people coming in?
We recently professed somebody who's in her 30s. And then Sister Katia must be in her 40s. I should know by now, but I lose track of time. And then there are 2 other sisters who are younger than I am, and then me, and then we have a couple in their 80s, and we have 2 sisters also in nursing homes nearby. So I did not include that in the aid. Well, our associates and donors give us general money for our Haitian mission, and then we also have, sometimes we have a particular student who will be paired with someone. My uncle, for example, has Marie Monique, and he started sponsoring her when she was little, you know, and now she's up, I think she must be in middle school by now. Actually, maybe she's in high school. It's been a bit sporadic with things, but it's amazing how in Haiti they're still keeping schools open as much as they can, because the alternative is you stay home and you don't get an education, and then you really don't have a future. So people just have to keep their ear to the ground. And of course, outside the capital, it's different. It's not that there's no gang activity outside of the capital, but it's not anything like it is right there. And we are right there. That we don't know even whether our own house is standing right now. One of our associates, the son of one of our associates, took the sisters and the ladies and a few of the employees in, said, you need to move in with me. This is a quieter neighborhood. But our house downtown Port-au-Prince is in a no-go zone. So I hope it's still standing. We had rebuilt a building right after the earthquake. And it's a building. And even the historical things that are in there and personal things that are in there, which would be a crying shame to lose, it's not people.
Do you get volunteers as well? Or do you have to belong to the whole group?
For our work in Haiti,
For your work, do you get volunteers wanting to help?
sometimes. We haven't had so many since COVID. It has been less of that, but our associates sometimes will be doing work that is, I would say, sort of parallel in our founder's spirit, in the spirit of the earlier sisters. But we also have, for example, there's a parish in Pennsylvania that has us, we don't have a house there anymore, but we did at one point, come in and do a quiet day, but they're very focused on supporting our work in Haiti. So until recently, it was one thing you could do was you could get these big shipping barrels and you could pack them with things that are difficult to get in Haiti or just so expensive there that it's even with the shipping cost, it's cheaper to send them. So until that became too dangerous, they were collecting, batteries and some other things, sometimes food, a lot of beans, things like that, to send down there. And that was a great help. I know that when our pre-earthquake convent was standing, there would be people that would come and stay with us and work down there for some time. Our sister Carolyn that I mentioned earlier, who was the novice director, she, for example, had tried her vocation, lasted less than 6 months and left. And they called her up after she'd been gone 6 months and said, I hadn't heard from you, but I'm hoping that things aren't in fact going well, because wouldn't you like to move in with the sisters in Haiti and play the organ at the cathedral and lead les petits chanteurs and teach the seminarians and so on. Just live with the sisters, don't be a sister, just. So she moved in with the sisters without being a sister. After 2 years of that, she actually reapplied. But she's not the only one. They would have people come, either for a few weeks, or in some cases, it sounds like quite a number of years, and participate in that. We have less in-person volunteering now on campus. As I said, since COVID, some of those things fell away, and we have not had so many organized activities, like stuffing all the envelopes, for example, would end up, some of our friends come over and we basically have, let us stuff, over 1,000 envelopes with all these things and little things like that. But yes, over the years.
Sister, could you perhaps explain, because you've mentioned them a couple of times, what associates are, please?
Well, I should have you explain what
No.
associates are.
No.
Why don't you? I'm actually director of associates. Associates are some of my favorite people, but that's not something that they have to be before they become associates. But they're people who desire a closer, more formal relationship with the sisters, so that it becomes mutual support in prayer. And they support us. Some of them support us financially. Some of them volunteer. All of them give us their prayer support, and we try to do the same with them. And they have a rule of life. The basic one is common to all the associates, much as our rule and constitution as sisters is the same as all the sisters, the St. Margaret's sisters here in the UK. Whether that be in Aberdeen when Sister Columba was still alive, or the Priory, or wherever it is, the basic is the same, and it's the same for the associates. So if you're a sister of St. Margaret, you're a sister of St. Margaret. If you're an associate in the US, you're also an associate here. But just as the sisters in the US, we have 3 main documents. We've got the Constitution and the Rule. We also have statutes, which are particular to our house. So the way in which the basic rule and constitution is lived out doesn't look the same in Walsingham or the Priory or the US. The core is the same. For the associates, they have a basic rule, but one of the things that I'm working with, for example, new associates, is making, what does that look like in their life? So what does their own commitment look like? So some people get really specific. Some people are, almost oblates, and they want something that's going to structure their life. So it's more like a trellis than it is like a set of rules that they absolutely must follow. But associates find that being connected with us and having someone to help them make a framework for their spiritual life, which in fact is all of life, so it can involve a lot of different practical parts of your life as well. That's supportive. And to know you're part of a community. As I said before, you can't be a Christian by yourself. And this is one way we support each other, and you know that somebody's out there that cares how you are. Somebody's out there that's supporting you in your prayer life. Makes a difference. So for some people, we almost never see them. They live on the other side of the country, and maybe they're too elderly to travel. I haven't met even the majority of our associates at this point, but some of them are very involved more locally. But we're all one community, and our associates are also, because they are a part of our community. For example, when we have our community requiem, the associates are remembered, also our departed associates. I was shocked, I tell you, as a postulant to hear that I was not yet part of the community, but the associates were. Because I hadn't yet quite sussed out what that meant. So, am I answering the question
Yeah.
well enough? Tell me what has meant to you,
Oh, goodness.
because you actually have experience with this.
I was. I was first, my first dip into religious life was as an associate of the Society of St. Margaret. And I guess I was one of those people that was more like an oblate than because they gave me a home, they gave me a spirituality, which, let's be honest, it still is my spirituality. I may belong to another religious community, but it's, you know, that spirituality of the Eucharist, of prayer, of intercession. Yes, it gives you, as you say, I think a trellis is a really good picture of that. And it is like having another family. Yes, I mean, it's often been said, you know what I'm going to say. The thing is, in many ways, I was the sister that they never allowed to join.
Maybe he just didn't look good enough in gray. I don't know.
Yeah, perhaps grey wasn't my colour. So yes, and obviously, as the Black Owl Charge is getting to realise my love of the founder, John Mason Neal. Yes, all those things sort of tied into it, really. Perhaps could you give us a picture of what's a typical day of a sister?
I could do that. Let me say while I'm thinking of it before I forget it again. As you're talking about, there is something for our associates and our sisters. Our two spiritual focuses are the holy name of Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament. So our spirituality tends to, I can't imagine any two better things to have as a focus for one's spirituality. Yeah, Jesus and Jesus. So here we are. But, you know, that's something we encourage in our associates also.
So would you liken the associates to the Franciscan tertiaries?
Franciscan tertiaries are, I think, sort of. Well, that's wonderful. So you could speak to that. Franciscan tertiaries, I mean, as I recently learned, trying to find a word for it because it was not a religious order that lived together, but it wasn't just a fellowship. And I didn't want to call it just one of the dispersed groups. We have a whole other canon in the U.S. about them. And I said non-traditional, trying to find a way, and he very accurately said, we've been around since 1300 something. You all are the really, really serious ones. Okay, we have associates that are associates with bonds of affection whose spiritual life is probably not anywhere near what yours is. And then we have others that are. But you all, from what I understand, have a rule of life, and I think there's a little more cohesiveness between you all also, whereas despite my efforts, not all of our associates are very well connected with other associates. So
the tertiaries are definitely an order.
yes,
They are an order.
And associates are not an order in the same way. I would like to see them support each other more, and I've tried to Zoom with some that are in the same area so they would get to know each other, but yeah, you all are a whole thing. You know, I mean, maybe next week she needs to be doing something.
Yes.
It would be interesting, I would want to attend that, because I'd love to talk to you, because I would like, now having heard a little bit from Brother Charlie, I would really like to hear more, because it sounds so interesting, and such a good group and good work.
Well, Francis went through but he was alive.
Mm-hmm. Yes, our associates definitely did not have that, and do not have that. Well, of course, neither did we. I mean, we haven't been around since 1300. But, okay, you were day in the life. Okay.
Day in the life of a sister.
So normally, we start the day with morning prayer at 6 a.m., and then we have an hour for our private meditation time before Eucharist at 7:30. And then breakfast and whatever. And then we break silence at around 8:15, 8:30, basically after breakfast, because we have the great silence during the night. I'll get back to that. 9:15 is our first sort of gathering of the day conference, and it's sort of, where are you going, where are you going? Here I have these assignments for you. Let's talk about whatever's come up. And then we go out and we do the different work that we have to do, either in the house or out of the house. Mornings tend to be more about community-focused work, things we're doing together, whereas afternoon is a little bit better time for being dispersed. We have noon office, which is something in the 1979 Book of Common Prayer in the States. It took terce, sext, and none, the little offices, and sort of combined them into one. And so we're following the prayer book office from the 1979 BCP. We do that at noon, then we have lunch or dinner. And then we're working in the afternoon. 5 o'clock evening prayer, 6 o'clock supper, 8 o'clock compline, and then we go into silence at 9. Now, what happens in between all those times can vary widely. And for example, Sister Promisa in New York City might have a little different schedule. She's still doing the office, she's still having Eucharist, but she works for Trinity Wall Street, and so even though she's ordained, she's part of their worship schedule. So, another thing, we have an hour and a half of private prayer a day. I mentioned our meditation time, but we also have time for intercessions and then spiritual reading as well. So, in that framework, some of the pieces can move around. Sometimes we've done a slightly different schedule in the winter because our chapel is across the parking lot from the convent and it's dark. And when you have people that are a little bit tippy or whose vision isn't good and there's ice in the parking lot, going across in the dark is not as good an idea. So we have sometimes in the middle of the winter done 7:30 morning prayer and then Eucharist at noon, and not had noon office, or people do it on their own. So it is flexible, but the components are the same. Trying to think what else I should add.
I was going to just sort of say as well also, of course, Sister Promise, yourself, and Sister Adele Marie are also ordained priests. I think you were one of the first religious orders.
Not the first one, but towards the beginning. We had a sister in the 70s who was a deacon, but Sister Catherine Louise had already done so much study before when they finally ratified women's ordination. She didn't need to go to seminary because she's one of those people who had just studied and studied and studied and studied and studied. So she just took there must have been something, I don't know what she did, but I know she didn't go to seminary more. She took the ordination exams and went through whatever diocesan process. Sister Adele Marie was ordained in 81. My novice director, Sister Mary Eleanor, was ordained much later in life in 1997. And then I was ordained in 2010, and Sister Promise's ordination to the diaconate was the last service at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine before everything shut down for COVID. It was one of those things where there's this weird thing, and are we drinking from the chalice? Are we not drinking from the chalice? We're not supposed to hug each other. Whoops, the bishop just came up and hugged me. Didn't she just, anyway. Yeah, so that's a much more recent thing. So, right.
Yeah. Any other questions people have?
Yeah, we went through the day, what you didn't do, and you said you do various things between breakfast and the midday thing. So what, for example, what did you do last Wednesday?
Well, last Wednesday, let me see. Oh my God. Well, we were getting ready for a funeral, actually. We had one of our sisters from Haiti died over the summer, and so we had the biggest funeral. I don't know if we've ever had a funeral that big for a sister. We had 100 people. The Haitian community turned out in force. So I was probably getting ready last Wednesday for the funeral. But that could have involved being on the phone. That could have involved a little extra weeding around the chapel. I think I did some weeding and pruning of rose bushes so it would look respectable when we had the guests. Figuring out the guest calendar, putting on lunch. We don't have any full-time, we don't have any full-time employees at all right now running our retreat center, and that involves our campus in Duxbury has a convent, and then we have 2 retreat houses, one of which has 9 bedrooms, and one it's 5 guest rooms, then Sister Christina Francis lives there. And then we have a little outbuilding, and then we have a conference center building, and then some, sheds and things. But so we take care of that. We do have some people who come in and help with the major mowing. We did have our own tractor, but we weren't using it enough ourselves. So we finally have just got, but it's all the things that you all do every day, plus the phone, plus if we didn't have any retreatants at that point because August is a different sort of lower key schedule, so that the sisters who aren't going anywhere can still have a little holiday time. It's what some people call a staycation, because you're staying home. But as Director of Associates, maybe I'll write them cards or give them a phone call. I might be, Sister Helen Agnes, who's our newly professed sister, is starting to go out and preach. So she may have been working on her sermon.
So you go out, what was I trying to say, is you go out,
Yes, I'm trying to think of the different things that I've done over the years. I volunteered with kindergarten and first grade at the little inner city school around the corner. One year I was working at a parish where they had a program for people who were unhoused, or mostly unhoused, that was a full day program where they came in. I'd be setting up art supplies and coffee and donuts, and they'd come in and do art for the day. Then we'd eat from the soup kitchen at noon, do some more art. But basically it was listening was the real job. So that was one thing I loved. One year I was working for St. Luke's San Lucas in Chelsea, which is mostly Spanish-speaking congregation. They were very patient with me. I can get by in Spanish. I can celebrate in Spanish. Father Edgar was like, "Why don't you not try to preach in Spanish?" I have done preaching in Spanish in North Carolina, because we have friends down there and we've done some work. Sister Christina Francis used to go down there in the summers and do vacation Bible school with the kids and help with baptism and quinceañeras, and she's been really working hard on her Spanish. and participating in the liturgies down there. And I have given that priest, right before he retired, a couple of weeks of vacation so I could cover the services in Spanish, and just had somebody go over my sermon, please, and fix the Spanish for me before I open my mouth. But let me just tell you that Holy Trinity, preaching on Trinity Sunday in a foreign language, I mean, I'm not convinced I've ever preached a decent sermon on the Holy Trinity without putting everybody to sleep in English. They put up with me in Spanish, which was very kind of them. I loved working at that church. One of the things that I was doing, that parish had a food bank, served breakfast and lunch on Saturdays. There was a women's group, a lot of sort of social work things, as well as all the worship. And so I was involved with that particular year. And we've been part of the diocesan things. I was part of the anti-racism group one year as Hispanic Ministries Committee. Sister Christina Francis was Secretary of Convention, which sounded like it was one day of the year, except for it was really a full day every week in Boston, and a whole lot more than that. And they keep trying to rope her back into it because she's ridiculously competent. I think she's actually going to get herself completely out of that, but she's just very good at organizing things. You've met her, I think.
Yes,
or at least most of you have.
She was at my licensing, yeah.
So.
And yes, Sister Christina is a professional musician, so she does a lot of ministry around music.
Mm-hmm.
Sister Adele has covered, I think she's probably covered interregnums in every church round and about.
And she does spiritual direction, for example. Sister Promise does spiritual direction. I haven't gone through that particular training myself. Sister Bridget, for example, did children's ministries at one of the big downtown churches. And then when she had early onset dementia, eventually, and we moved to Duxbury, she actually started as her ministry. She would go out once a week and spend the day at the local cat shelter and, doing all the things that needed to be done. And, as her abilities diminished, she still went, and then she was on socialization for the cats that had just come in and weren't sure about people. So, we do what we can, where we can, and it looks very different for each sister. I remember one of our novices at one point, Sister Helen Agnes, I think, was looking into, what was it, like therapeutic riding volunteer on something about horses and
right, yeah.
therapy, and she's looking at something else. But I mean, it really, really depends on, what the needs are, what our abilities are. Christina Francis is good at running things. That is not my gift. But there are other things that I could do. And we lead retreats, and we lead quiet days, and I've done Anglican rosaries, Anglican prayer beads. I don't know that they've made it over here.
They're not a big thing over here.
No. I used to lead, and I guess I did this past year, how to make and pray with prayer beads. And so get them all the things and then coach them through making their own prayer beads. That's the sort of thing I might be doing. And in Haiti, I was running the altar linen project. And one of the things that we were doing there when we had a few more of us is taking orders from American parishes generally, and then I ordered linen, and then she had to teach me how to pull that thread so that you cut it straight. Never even heard of that. My mother was a home ec teacher for a while, and I still had never heard of that. And drawing the little designs, and then sending it out to Haitian women to do the embroidery. And then when they'd done that, then, wash it, iron it, package it. So that was my work for a while. Also, I taught at the seminary when I was down there. And the sisters have done the spirituality class for a long time. I was able to add a couple other things, as well as teaching French, I also taught English as a second language. So that's the kind of thing that I also did at the seminary, but I could see myself working with somebody as a volunteer in a program in Massachusetts as well, because there is the need. So.
And is it very serious all the time?
We are always serious. We are always very serious, and except, of course, we spend most of the day staring upward, gazing towards the ceiling. There's a quote from our founder about basically not being lugubrious, that the phrase, nay, high spirits, comes into that quote someplace. But saying, you don't need to be a bunch of stick in the muds. God gave us the gift of joy, and we enjoy each other. That I think having a sense of humor doesn't mean being silly. I mean, it can be. Some of us can be silly. But I think it's actually a spiritual discipline to have a sense of humor. Because we're not God, and when things happen, you have to learn to laugh and just say, we are so human. And I think God must have a sense of humor too. You could think of a number of, I can think of a number of reasons why I think God must have a sense of humor. I wish we had more stories about Jesus that were like that, because I have a feeling that there was a lot of humor going along. I mean, if you think about those 12 men and Jesus, and then all the other people that were with them, including the women. I mean, remember when they needed to pick somebody to replace Judas, they said it needs to be somebody that's been with us from the beginning, which means, we always have the pictures where it's Jesus and it's 12 people, except for there were other people that were also with them all the time too. You don't do that without a sense of humor. You have to have a sense of humor. If you're living with people, you have to have a sense of humor. So I remember Sister Esther saying something about it's the very serious, very holy ones that don't last long, because they can't deal with normal people. And when you live at close quarters, I think humor and grace goes together very well.
Richard.
Nursing was quite a feature
Mm-hmm.
during this. Does that continue?
We are not doing any specifically nursing work right now. We've had sisters who have been nurses. Sister Marie Margaret, I think. No, she wasn't last, because Sister Mary Gabriel was also a nurse. But our last registered nurses have died. That is about to change. Actually, we have another first profession that will be coming up, and she's a nurse practitioner. But right now her ministry has nothing to do with nursing. It may end up being something that she does. But we decided when they moved out of the downtown Boston convent that it was up on Beacon Hill, which is by the State House, and let's just say they made it, it's one of those old cobblestone streets which don't look very old to you at all, because, what is that joke about Americans think 100 years is old and Brits think 100 miles is far?
Yes.
Something like that. But they sold that, and they said, I don't think we're in the business of running institutions anymore, because we ran institutions, nursing institutions and things like that, and we're like, there are people that do that now, and they do it better than we do. So we ran a school in Haiti until it got so big that you really needed professional administrators with training, ongoing training, and as a former teacher, I'll say that's a good thing. So we handed that over to the diocese, and we did help teach, but we didn't run it. Same with running nursing programs. I think if we have a sister who's a nurse and it happens that there is a nursing thing right there that needs to be done and we can do something about it, that would absolutely fit. But I think the closest to nursing that we've had is running the Foyer Notre Dame in Port-au-Prince, which was started by one of our sisters. They discovered that elderly, because there's no social security, you know, if your kids die first, you're toast. I remember there was one lady we cared for when I was living there. I did live in Haiti for a while, who had 4 sons, and she was married, and her husband and all 4 kids died before she did. And so she was making a living begging in the churchyard, and her priest brought her to us. She actually was not really thrilled about that, because she said she was just fine, thank you very much. But caretaking and offering, some of that was nursing, some of it was pastoral care. So that was the closest, I think, that's current. Yes. We're working on that right now. We had somebody, we finally hired somebody. When we lived in Boston, we had a full-time cook and a full-time assistant. So we were dealing with, you know, 1 meal a day, maybe 2. And we also helped, since it was 40,000 square feet, I think we had 40 bedrooms. Anyway, it could be a lot of people. So we really needed that. When we moved down to Duxbury in 2012, we said, oh, we don't need any help with this, we'll be fine. And, you know, there were more of us living there at the time, and we thought we would all take turns cooking, and then we discovered there really are people who cook better than other people. I am great at washing dishes. I can bake, but people are trying not to have that many calories. And my mother was a home ec major, so why would anybody want to eat my cooking when they could eat her cooking? And then I worked for a boarding school, yeah. So I do dishes. We all help. But right before the pandemic, we thought we need some more help. And we did hire somebody full-time to help with that. And we had a number of sisters with Alzheimer's at the same time. And I think that became final right before the pandemic hit. And so she was part of our little bubble. But she's just gone back into nursing. That's the other thing she did, home health aide. She spent so much time both by herself in the kitchen that didn't work for her very well, because she's such a sociable, you know, hands-on caretaking person. So she's back in that, and we don't have anybody again. And it's been interesting. So this is gonna have to change sometime soon, because we've gotten like a caterer to drop off pans of food if we have a big crowd. But yeah, it's an issue. We can take care of ourselves, but it's hard to take care of yourself. You know, taking care of a home it can be very full-time. And if you're also trying to do other things and have ministries out, it does help to have somebody. So I am hoping that within a month we'll at least have somebody part-time, I hope. I fly. We do. We didn't have even enough seats in our car for all of us when we lived in town. We got on the subway. At some point we discovered, after 9/11, I think, somebody said, you know, we don't even have enough seats if we ever had to evacuate. We could get everybody in the car. We had to rent a car if we all wanted to go someplace. And so then we made sure we had enough vehicles, that we had enough seats. Well, now that we're down in Duxbury, we're not near a subway. And so we have to have enough cars for us to drive. So I've learned, like, we just got a really big pickup to replace the other one, because in Duxbury you take your own trash to the dump. There's not pickup. And so I've learned to drive a big pickup truck, which is interesting if you're supplying for a parish and you end up in the pickup truck and you jump out and you're in your habit, you know, with your driving sunglasses, carrying the vestments, and you've just climbed out of this truck and people like, but yes, so we do drive. I guess we don't all have licenses or used to have licenses, or, you know, some people don't like to drive after dark. But yeah, because we're not where there's decent public transportation. You may have heard about the lack of public transportation in the US. I assure you it's worse, whatever you heard. Boston itself isn't too bad, but.
I was going to ask how you have embraced new technology, or have embraced new technology, Zoom, and is it useful to you?
We count on the technology. Now, we are not as, I wouldn't say we're as tech savvy as some. For example, there are brothers in Cambridge who got right into streaming all their services and doing that. We don't have the setup for that. And also, as one of our sisters pointed out, if it's on the internet, it's forever. And all that came into being when we had quite a number of sisters with Alzheimer's living with us, and you kind of never knew what might happen. And then it's on the internet forever. So we haven't done a lot of that. But we're on social media and we use it to best we can. We have somebody who helps us out with that because we don't have time to be monitoring all of that. But April Merrill takes that on for us. And I mean, we're expected to be able to use our computers and get to files on the SharePoint and produce the bulletins and do all the documents and know how to use the software and things. But as I said, we're not doing as much, we're still not streaming, and we don't really have any intention of doing that. There are plenty of people who do that.
Do you keep in touch with your associates on Zoom?
Absolutely. And at this point, we stopped a number of years ago sending out paper, hard copy newsletters, and we have an email blast that people can sign up for. It doesn't happen that often, but you can sign up to be on the mailing list, and then if something happens, if we've got an event, or, you know, when Sister Marie Therese died, that's how people knew. And I had a list of a couple of associates who were not even on email, and I, you know, try to remember to copy that and stick it in an envelope and send it. But mostly that's what we count on these days, because it's really, really expensive to send things out in hard copy, and most people are on email and can get the email blast, but you also have to sign up for it separately, and trying to explain to people how to do that isn't always clear. But, you know, we could do more, but I think we do pretty well. You might have thoughts on that.
No, your social media is very, very good, and April is amazing.
She is.
Yeah, and you did I loved the, you did an Advent thing, wasn't there? I can't remember there was a hashtag for it, and I can't remember what it was.
Yes. Yeah. We did, back when Twitter was Twitter and not X, before it had been taken over, we did a post every day for Advent a number of years, and we've done that on Facebook as well, with a hashtag.
Visio Divina.
Visio Divina, that's
Visio
what it
Divina,
was.
yeah.
Describe it to them.
So, there's a very monastic practice called Lectio Divina, which is divine reading and slow reading. Well, instead of that, this was a very visual thing. So it would be a picture, it could be a bird or a view over the lake or something, and it tied up with the Advent readings or a hymn, and it was just it was something that, a bit like we try and do with our social media. It's something that you see, and it doesn't take half an hour of sitting down to read it. It's just it's a picture that grabs you for that moment.
One of the things our diocese participated in for a while, they had a word of the day for all the way through Advent again. And so we participated in that by doing our own post with that hashtag, which I think was usually Visio Divina, but with that word that everybody was posting on.
Yeah.
And that was kind of neat. And then you could look it up and see what everybody else was posting, and that gave you a lot of material for meditation, really. So I should have brought those, the prayers in your pocketbook.
There's some at the back.
Oh, there are? Oh,
There
cool.
are. We've got some at the back.
So you can see what Visio Divina is if you go look at those little booklets we put together.
Yeah. Unless anybody's got a really burning question, let's have some supper, and you can ask questions as we relax together a bit. Thank you so much. Sister only arrived at 2 o'clock this afternoon, having not slept all night on the plane. So thank you. I've thrown you in at the deep end.
Well, thank you for your patience with me. I'm not sure if I made a lot of sense, but I offer you what I have.
One of the things that's often been said is every parish that Father Alex goes to, there are nuns appear. and so the thing is, it is something that Sister Christina and I talked about, and we're hoping that this will very much be a sort of a reciprocal thing. I hope this won't be the last time we see Sister Sarah, but I'm hoping that we can get some of the other sisters to come as well. Sister Promise would be great.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you. Let's have some supper. I'll say grace now, and then we can go and help ourselves to supper. Bless, O Lord, this food which we are about to receive from your bounty. Help us be mindful of the needs of others. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Amen.